Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Deaths, back with another Kamihime project video. Now, this event's already out, so I'm a little bit late with doing this video, but this is the Sun Wukong event. It is light-based, so Dark has the advantage on this one, and it is also the first time an Advent has had heroic difficulty, so that's something to know, and it won't always be like this, because I know they stopped doing it at one point, but if you're going after the medal for heroic difficulty, then you're going to want to do that as soon as possible. Hopefully you'll be strong enough to handle that, but you do need quite a bit of power in order to do so, and then definitely the right type of Kamihime. There's also a few other changes too that they've done, so we'll go over those as well. And the biggest thing too, at this point, there should be enough free events to give us the guaranteed SSR ticket if you've been getting the 1/10 ticket fragments, or I call them ticket fragments. But if you've done the free pools and then gotten the 2 ticket fragments per each event so far, this should be the first time you get one of those guaranteed pools. So that's something to know. Lastly, this is an Advent event, so you're on your own. A good place to test that out is weekly Advent, because that has difficulty similar to this one. So it'll be a good place to check out and see where you can grind. You want to be able to do Ragnarok. However, Ragnarok Plus will still give you more drops. You just can't do it all the time, just like once a day. Heroic is completely optional. That has nothing to do with the event or anything else. Heroic's just a high difficulty challenge where you can just get an I1 medal, basically. But Ragnarok, definitely the recommended grinding point. So if you can do that much at least, then you should be good to getting a lot, if not most of the items. Like, you can just grind Ragnarok, get all the stuff you want, and then be done with it. It's slower if you do it from anything lower. Speaking of which, the stuff that is recommended on here, I tend to look at it a different way, because the Idolan, easily go after her. She's high priority. She's good as a main, she's good as a sub, and if you don't keep her, she's still worth Idolan Orbs. Idolan Orbs are very important at this point of the game, because there's multiple things that use them. Machine Beasts use them. If I remember correctly, you also need them for S-Class Souls. You'll also need them for the Idolan Orb Shop changes later on, which will basically give a grindable method to get 100% Idolans for each element, so that's something to know. Idolan Orbs are very, very important, so if you do not plan on keeping this Idolan, still get her anyway in order to sell her off. I do have to point out, if you get a Gacha SSR, hold on to them, because there are 2 things later on that will really make them worthwhile. So, that said, event SSR, feel free to sell them if you don't want to keep them. The Ssr Weapon. Now, the one that takes the higher amount of materials, chances are that's not getting final break limit at any point. They never seem to get that. However, the one that takes the least amount of materials per trade, that one may get final break limit later on down the line. I don't know for sure. Japanese side has not had a repeat of this event, so that said, you may or may not want to hold on to that weapon just to be sure. Especially considering the fact that free-to-play weapons for light are kind of lackluster. They still work, but at this point, your only grindable methods will make you lack in one or even multiple areas. So, generally speaking, you're going to want to hold on to as many options as you can with light SSR weapons, because most of them are gacha related if you want to do really, really well. Now, other things I need to point out, the green orbs, which are called cores, you're going to want these as well, especially for S-Class Souls. These are also used to like break limited weapons and certain things. You are going to want these. However, these, if I remember correctly, are used to trade for the Dragonic Eye Shards. You also want those as well. But that may have changed looking at this dialogue. Either way, you're going to want to make sure you have enough of both. So those are pretty high priority targets as well. And the last thing I can really suggest is the magic jewels because, of course, you know, magic jewels. I don't need to say much more. Now, everything else is as you need it. Me personally, I tend to need those books quite a bit because I've been break limiting a lot of different Kamihime. So there's that, and I also just unlocked another a S-Class Soul recently, and I'm going to work for another one. You need quite a lot of books for that. You need quite a lot of books for the 50 Dragonic Eye weapons. Those gold and silver books, which they are called grimoires, you're going to need quite a bit of them. So I suggest getting them as you need them because you can still get them from like O trades and other sources. And the gacha tickets, of course, just grab them anyway. They're cheap. They're cheap. They're free pools. Grab them. But other than that, you don't really need too much more stuff. So more or less get stuff as you need it. But the higher priority targets definitely first. Now, the interesting thing about this event, first off, we do have the recommended combat power. That is more or less on point, as far as I can tell. It is more or less a very good suggestion of where you should be at. However, this is assuming you're doing very well with your weapon skills. Bottom line with weapon skills, get assault, get defender, just get enough to be able to survive but still hit hard. And then there's other stuff you usually want to get like exceed and maybe even ascension. It all depends, but the main thing is that if you're capable of clearing the weekly advent versions, you're capable of clearing the ones in this event. So that's something to know. And they say you don't need to be too much stronger between Ragnarok and Ragnarok Plus, but my suggestion, you probably want to be at about 55,000 maybe. And then Ragnarok you could clear before 40,000 if you're strong enough, so that's something to know. But these are general recommendations of how strong you should be. And then you still need to be rank 11 for Expert, rank 16 for Ultimate, rank 50 for Ragnarok, rank 71 for Ragnarok Plus, and you can only do it twice a day. And then rank 100 for Heroic, plus you have to clear Ragnarok Plus 2 times already. The big kicker with Heroic, though, is the fact that, again, optional. Completely optional. And you should be able to clear below the recommended combat power. 75,000 is quite high. But, you should be able to clear it under that if you have the right characters. So, it's more or less just give it a shot and see what happens, because there's really no penalty or anything for that. And all you get is an I-1 medal anyway, so if you're looking for a challenge or something like that, just have at it. Otherwise, just don't even worry about it. Now, here's where one of the changes have clearly happened. If you're paying close attention to this reward item list, there are less things that drop from these boxes. That's because they've condensed the whole list. You still get EXP spears. If you find a rainbow box, I call them platinum as well, but if you find one of those, you'll still get basically an Adon or a weapon to pop out, unless it's higher difficulties and you might get something else. But generally, when it comes to the reward items, or the items you trade for rewards, it's all condensed into one type. That makes it a lot less tedious, because you won't have to find certain things as certain stuff. It's all condensed to one. Just keep grinding until you get more stuff. Now, the enemies. I don't go over standard. I've stopped going over expert because we have higher difficulties now. I start at ultimate and higher because ultimate's still the bottom line you want to grind things at. You can still get stuff if you can grind expert, but you want to bottom line ultimate. Like, no lower than ultimate if you seriously want to get a lot of things. I also don't go over the normal enemies usually, but these ones can be a little bit weird because there's random cuts for one, and then there's also poison damage that one of them can do. And then there's another that can attack buff itself. You may want to be careful if their orbs get full, so pay attention to the orb counts. Now, when it comes to the boss, 1.5 million HP, 2 max orbs, does AoE light damage for normal mode, 7 times random for raging mode, but both cases it will up its combo rate, meaning double and triple attack, for 4 turns. What this means is that since it's turn-based, you have to clear it. You can't wait it out, especially since it is 4 turns. So that said, there is literally no means of removing this unless you have buff removal. So keep that in mind. Speaking of buffs, and you can't remove these ones, there are 2 triggers. The first trigger at half HP, attack power to itself. And it says cumulative too, so it will stack with the next one. The second one, 25% or less HP, it gives another attack power increase, and this time defense power up. However, it's considered to be erasable for the defense, I do believe. The attack is not. At least with how the wiki is translating things. So, that said, it's going to be more dangerous as the HP drops, so you're going to want to finish the fight faster and faster. Now, generally with Ragnarok, all the stuff's basically the same. It's just more HP. She got double HP. Ragnarok Plus, however, is where things gets pretty interesting. First off, you're going to want to pay attention to these normal enemies as well, so I'm actually going to go over their details. Stage 1, 3 million HP, which is as much as a boss in Ragnarok. Then on top of that, 2 orb counts. When it bursts, it does AoE light damage. However, if you activate any red skills, it will damage all of your party. So that is something to remember when you activate red skills in stage 1. When you activate green skills in stage 2, that is also something that gets countered. So remember that. It has 2 million HP, 3 orbs, randomly 3 times hit with poison for 3 turns that deal up to 1500. So normal burst can actually do quite a bit of damage, so be very wary of that one. And then on top of that, it leaves lingering damage. The trigger, however, when you use any recovery ability, which is green, it will hit one character and put dizzy on them. And it also says it puts dizzy to itself. I'm not sure. But the fact that it puts dizzy on one of your characters and also counters them whenever you use a green ability, that's something to very, very carefully handle as well. Now, this next one has complicated mechanics with itself, but it has 1 orb, 2.8 million HP, and it gives, whenever it bursts, an attack power increase for 4 turns, a damage cut for 4 turns. Now, if that damage cut is active and its orbs are full, then it's going to use its trigger, which will do large AoE damage. So pay a close attention to that one. You're going to want to remove that. And then for the boss itself, it does the same thing as before with the previous fights. But it has 12 million HP this time. So that's all in Ragnarok Plus. Now we get into Heroic. Heroic is going to be very tedious, so be prepared for it. But generally, the first 2 enemies in the stage 1 are more or less the same. There's just one major difference. Now, they both have 20 million HP and 2 orbs. When they burst, it's large light damage to one character. One trigger gives a special buff to itself, and the other one can put instant death. So, if I remember correctly, you're going to need to be able to block off debuffs in order to avoid that instant death. However, here's where things are different. One will put damage cut to itself and recover 1 million HP. and that damage cut is 6 turns. The other will deal darkness damage, or it says blind. It's either darkness damage or blind. It's hard to tell with Google Translate. I'll go over the paragraph later. But the main thing is that it will buff its own attack, but also lower its defense. So that's something to pay attention to. Now, with the second stage, all of these enemies all have 30 million HP. There are no orbs for the third one, 2 orbs for the other 2. And it doesn't really say what the bursts are for here, so again I have to go over the paragraph. But it is mentioning that it can put a poison to itself for one enemy and a dizzy to itself for another. And that in turn activates triggers. Now, the first enemy with the poison effect, it has a chance. It will add poison to itself when attacking. And then when its HP is half or less, because it can do it twice at half and 25% HP, it will do large damage to everybody when it's dizzied or poisoned. So these first 2 enemies, they have the same concept. One just does poison and one does dizzy. The third enemy does damage based on the number of abnormal conditions. Now, I'm not sure if it's to itself or not. Again, I gotta go over the paragraph. They're not really clear with these heroics for some reason. At least until you get to the paragraph where there's a wall of text. But that's already worrying because of the fact that damage based on conditions always can ramp up to some insane numbers. So you definitely need to be careful with that one. And then the boss herself has completely been reworked. It is 3 orbs, 100 million HP. Normal mode, double attack, chances up, and it instantly does a normal attack, meaning it can get the double attack off. Raging, same thing, only it gives both double and triple attack rate up. And that's for 3 turns. More so, it gets stronger throughout the fight. So, first thing it does out the gate, attack up, 3 turns, can't be erased. Then the second one, attack up, 3 turns, can't be erased, 75% HP or less. Third trigger, attack up, it says erasable, so you can get rid of this one. Instantly does normal attack, half HP or less. And then the last one, attack up, it's erasable, immediately does 2 normal attacks at 25% or less. Now, if I remember correctly, I have heard that there's a spread effect on the boss, so that means it can start doing AoE damage. So that's something to know. So I'm going to go over a lot of this. Now, when it comes to stage 1 for Ragnarok Plus, I've mentioned all that. Avoid red attacks. Avoid green for stage 2. And then stage 3 and stage 4 are pretty much self-explanatory. Going into the heroic version of this fight, this is where things get a little bit tricky. First off, if you have Rom, Asclepius, or even Perseus, they're going to be very helpful for this. So that's something to know. But I have seen Union members clear it with Caspar, so that's another thing too if you got the right coverage for through characters. It says it's recommended to have at least 2 or 3 dark characters on your team, so I'm guessing that's if you want to go the Ssr Diablos route. And honestly, it could be clearable off element. I was very close to clearing the last one off element. It's just the fact that there's a turn lag issue that the server had. That's not to sit up and say that you that's not to say that you should clear it on element, because honestly, if you can do it off element, then go ahead and try. Just be wary of that one thing, because it was just maddening when the game just eventually just crashed whenever I did anything and I was just stuck. So on element's definitely the easiest time with this stuff, but it still should be somewhat doable off element, because that's how the heroics work first. As long as you got your damage cut, your healing, and then it's also suggested to have blind on the enemies as well, so that's something to know. And reducing the combo rate, that's a very important thing if you can do that. So that said, Hades is suggested to be very good on this fight. Ssr Bastet if you have her. Ssr Nyarlathotep, it's hard to pronounce her name if you have her. If you're going a little bit of an off-element mechanic, Azazel's always worth it, because she's got quite a bit of stuff for that. Osiris is good for healing. Nefertim is good for healing. And then some others that can reduce combo rate, like Satan, or even absorbing orbs. Like reducing orbs or reducing combo rate. Like Satan is good for that. DWU is good for that. Thanatos is always suggested because, you know, she's pretty good for doing debuffs and whatnot too. If you have the dark version of Nuwa, she's also suggested. Erebus can help in some cases, so that's something to know. As for the Eidolons, and they don't seem to go after the stages too, but as for the Eidolons, they suggest slime for some reason, mainly because I guess it defends against an element. So if you have an Eidolon that defends against elemental damage, that could help you out, maybe. But you more or less just want to make sure you're still capable of withstanding things. So Ssr Diablos, if you're going like mixed element, like say 3 dark and like 2 off element. Easily, if you feel like you really need to get a boost, get a Guardian Eidolon with 100% Eidolon. Or if you're one of the ones doing off element water, you could probably sit up and do the Catastrophe Eidolon, because it's out with 100% Eidolon. There are some people that have it, you just need to shuffle until you find one. Stuff that protects against light damage will really help as well. So if you got summons that can do that, or give up some barriers or something like that, that would help too. A very useful Eidolon is always a Kaiser Eidolons, because they're like a 30% cut, and they just get even stronger. So when you get them initially, it is a 30% cut for 2 turns towards the element they're strong against. So Dark Kaiser would definitely be very helpful here. If you've raised them, then it gets even stronger. Like every 2 limit breaks, it gets even stronger. So it can be a 40% cut and then a 50% cut for 2 turns. Very, very helpful. And keep in mind, elemental cuts stack with just all damage cuts, so that's something to know. Defense also stacks with it. Barriers stack with it. Some barriers are listed as different things too, so if you get crafty, you can just tank everything and just do the fight. But remember, if you're doing on Nutaku's side, you might have the turn lag issue, so that's something to know. But honestly, the enemy HP isn't as bad as you would think it is. I mean, it's still close to like it's still close to 250 million HP you have to go through with all these enemies, but each one doesn't have that much health to begin with. And as far as I can tell, you're going to want to take out who you think is the most dangerous. The one that will put poison to itself will start lowering its own HP over time anyway, so I think you can ignore it until it gets to that 50% mark. Then you would want to tank it twice. So you could probably leave that first enemy on its own. The one that dizzies itself, that's where it would take a minute. But the one that does large damage based on the number of debuffs, that could be a dangerous one. So be careful with that. You'll probably want to take them out first. The one that gives cut and recovery, you're probably going to want to take that one out. And then the boss, just be wary when it's starting to do attacks and all that. You definitely want to get the combo rate down, if you can. But if you get creative with different things, you can start reducing your damage to obscene levels, because, quite frankly, I've heard that if you do off-element heroic, you'll just get completely wiped. That's not the case. I've already seen that on the fire one. I cannot stress that enough. I've made ROM pretty much face tank what would normally do 30,000, reduced to 4,000 or less. Sometimes even just nullifying damage. If you're smart enough about mechanics, you can bypass that. And just know that if you decide to go for okay, I found the heroic things, but if you decide to go for off element, just be wary about how long the fight will become. So that's something to know. But anyways, stage 1, you do want to kill them both at the same time, so be sure to do that. Because it says if you defeat either one, the remaining will prepare for a whole instant death technique, and it will just keep doing it. So you want to kill them both at the same time. The one that recovers is going to be a bit of a problem though, so reduce it first. Now the second one, the second fight, they're suggesting that the middle one is relatively harmless, so that's the one you probably want to leave for last, just like I thought. The bottom one is considered the most dangerous. So you have to be careful of that. And then the third stage, I more or less said the whole thing. It's like everybody is always exposed to some pretty high damage, so get some combo rate debuffs. That should help you out. Some turn control through orbs can also help you out as well. And there is quite a lot of increase at the 25% boost, so be very careful. They say that right here. Blind is very helpful for this fight, though. So if you can get blind off, there you go. And of course, if you also have something that gives you evasion, because there's been add-ons with that as well. An enemy with blind and you with evasion is one seriously big boost. Now, this is the last thing I need to go over with this is the rewards. So the list has changed to just one item. You need 80 to get all of the add-on. You need 80 to get all of the cheaper weapon, 180 to get all of the more expensive one. Don't worry about the Ssr weapons. If you're looking to get the grimoires, the silver one needs 150 and the gold one needs 300. Don't worry about the half elixirs or energy seeds. You'll get tons of those other ways. I don't know what it means by the Kamihime ticket being sequentially due to defects, but I guess that was a thing on the Japanese side, so be careful. The normal gacha tickets just get 15. 270 for the SSR guaranteed fragments. 2 per day for the EXP orbs, but don't worry about them. Soul points, if you're worried about those, 180. Magic jewels is like 300 for basically 3,000 magic jewels. It's like 1 for every 10. Green orbs, you need 135. Dragonic eye shards, you need 100, so you don't need the green orbs for those. If you want to complete the whole list, then that's basically 2016. Now then, for the stuff that you're trying to get, it is going to be 40% light elemental attack and 20% HP. That alone is already good for a main effect. Considering that the base stats on the Adolin is quite high, at least for an event one anyways. And then on top of that, you get white attack up when you summon her. It's not that much, but it's still a buff. She could be quite useful main or sub, so my opinion, she's worth keeping. In fact, I'm going to replace one of my characters with one of my Adolins with her, in fact. So that's something to know. Then on top of that, the cheaper weapon, large assault, medium defender. That always quite useful. It just doesn't final break, and it may do it later down the line. I don't know for sure. And if you want to, you can put this on an Adolin and get damage cut when he bursts. So with proper timing, that can also help with that as well. I mean, you can burst on call with Arthur, so that's something to know. Same thing with Charles. Now, the trademark weapon for Sun Wukong, or Sun Goku as they're also called, is that little staff that extends. It's not even mentioned as a staff weapon, it's a spear. But stats-wise, it's not bad. Ability-wise, it's quite horrible. However, it does have that large, elaborate, it should give you a decent cap increase, so you may or may not want to hold on to it until you can get the catastrophe add-ons, because when you get stronger, it becomes basically more it becomes more worthwhile to just have Solomon or Medea nuke everything, and upping their ability damage caps will help towards that. Other than that, I can't see too much of a use for this, so you can get rid of it if you really want to. We'll get better stuff later on anyways. Because there'll be because all the ultimate raids will end up dropping Ssr weapons, I think either next month or the month after. And when that happens, they'll come with elaborate and assault, and it will final break. Just two of those will up the elaborate cap to how far you can really get it. So that said, you could just wait till then for elaborate. The Stinger is not really worth it all that much unless you just don't use that element for other stuff. And of course, Ssr weapons. If you want my honest opinion, Ssr weapons are crap at this point unless they give 2 skills, because there's so many things that get 2 skills. So Ssr weapons are just fodder. And then you can get a good handful of the event items if you just do all this stuff right here. So it's the usual things in order to get the different rewards. You need R, SR, you need to clear without using an elixir. They just shrunk the list because there used to be an element one that you had to do it with, and then you also had to do multiple with without an elixir. Now, if you clear expert and ultimate with SR below, that's 10 each. If you clear Ragnarok with R Kamihime, you get a Dragonic Eye Shard. If you clear Ragnarok Plus without an elixir, you get another 10 of the event trade item. So that's the new list for now, and I don't know if it's going to change later on, but that's how the new list is going to work. You don't need to do certain elements no more. But the fact that you have to clear Ragnarok with R Kamihime, you need to be quite a bit strong for that one. Probably about the Ragnarok Plus recommendation for that, so keep that in mind. But anyways, that's all for this. This video is going on long enough because Heroic takes out a good chunk of it. Again, Heroic, my recommendation, you definitely need cuts, you definitely need heals. Blind is going to be very, very helpful against a boss. Also, anything that reduces combo rate. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon because I have raised a dark team. I have raised a dark grid. They are my second strongest. If I do not clear this Heroic, I'm going to be absolutely pissed at this game because they are more than strong enough to handle this. So, if I lose, it should be my fault. It shouldn't be turn lag or anything like that. But anyways, that's all for this. More of this will come soon, and take care.